And we're live. Welcome everyone to Frank Analysis. We are back with these solution panels. I'm here with Yona. You've known him. He's been on here recently. Jack Sith, Satan Claus, aka doesn't exist, aka Paul E. And we got Fuck Deep Sea Mining, aka Glory Jones. All of these people are returning guests on here. And I think they have really interesting things to say about how we can solve all these problems. And I know that there's people in the chat right now asking what my thoughts are on Pedro Castillo being removed from presidency. This is something that happens pretty much every year in Peru. Like, we get a new president every year because one of them gets removed because of corruption. I haven't looked into the exact reason for why Pedro Castillo has been removed, but I did get invited to go on the show to talk about this big show. I got invited to Jimmy's show, but obviously I have to do this today. I had this planned out much further out in advance. So,
Yeah.
plus we're gonna get into solutions here. So, what's up, everyone? Where do you guys want to start?
I tell you, my heart just sinks for Pedro Castillo because I've been there before when everyone's running around the chairs and the music's playing, and all of a sudden the music stops. Everybody sits down, and Pedro's like, "What the fuck, guys?
I was literally just thinking musical chairs, man.
Get the
I
fuck
was
out
literally
of the way.
just thinking that,
Go to
Yoda.
Santiago. We don't care." All right, sorry.
You're
More
reading my
electoral
mind,
politics. More electoral politics.
Yeah,
Oh, I'll start. Just because it
deep
was
sea
like
mining.
yeah. Well, I'm not gonna. That's not the topic I'm touching on right now. But
Okay.
so today, every Wednesday outside the Australia House in London, from 3 to 5 p.m. London time, there's protests happening for Julian Assange. So I go there. We're like yelling at people from the street corner, waving our signs, getting some honks and stuff. And obviously, like, what does Team Assange London always do? We always have our kefias. We always have like there's always one person that comes with the Palestinian flag waving across, like waving from his bike. And so, we're always repping. So this, I don't remember what it was, but it was like it was a truck from some Arab company, and I know it was Arab because it said Arab on the thing. It was like Arab something something, and then the script in Arabic. And he's honking and he's going crazy, and he's like, yeah, 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 let's go. And he's going like crazy and smiling at us, and traffic. So he stops just like 10 meters ahead of us. So me and one other person run up to him, and he's like, "Yeah, free Palestine, long live Palestine, let's go for Palestine." So I go, "Hey, yeah, hey yo, you're cheering for Morocco, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's go Morocco, let's go Palestine." And he was so happy. And then, oh my God, it was so awesome because then also later that day, as I was walking to the train station to make my way back to where I'm staying, like, I walked past a Palestinian Lebanese restaurant, and there's like these dudes sitting outside and they're checking out my kefia. And like, after I clock that they're looking at me, after a couple seconds, like, we make eye contact and they're like, "Yeah, long live Palestine." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah."
Hmm.
So I really wanted to share that because it's like been on my mind ever since this evening when like I saw the support. Those were just like two kind of like instances that stuck out to me. But like, oh my God, I don't know.
Yeah, this
The
that is
way the
historic though, because that's the first time an Arab country has made it to the quarterfinals in the World
Yeah.
Cup.
uh-huh. Well,
And
not
I just got to
well.
shout out Richie Medhurst between the crab dances, the crab rave dance on his thing. He showed that clip. That's where I first saw it, where they were showing an Israeli reporter going around, there in Qatar, interviewing, and all these people. As soon as they found out it was Israeli TV, they're like, "No, no, 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 Palestine all the way!" And then it was like back and forth. And it was just country after country of like, that
Well,
was awesome.
Morocco
Shot point.
literally has not only like the Middle East cheering for it, but also like the entire continent of Africa cheering for it.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah,
but like it's so, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's just so awesome to see how this has gotten so many people like reminding the world of how Palestine is in our hearts, because that's genuinely what it is. No matter what negotiations these Arab governments do to normalize the state of Shitsrael, it's never, the people are always going to have their hearts with Palestine. And I might touch back on that later, but I just really wanted to share that story because no one else was saying anything. So
Have you
I thought,
guys
hey,
looked-
now would be a good time.
And have you guys looked at that documentary about the corruption in FIFA with like the president who's from Switzerland?
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen that
Yeah.
documentary, but someone brought it up to me, and I was like, "Oh,
I
I gotta
haven't
watch
seen
that."
the documentary,
Follow the
but
money,
I've
bro.
literally
It's kind of insane.
researched this to know
It is
the
pinky. I
corruption.
just want to point out before you leave the topic of Palestine that for those that want to draw the comparison to the United States of America, when the Oklahoma Territory originally was laid out, per the 1830 Indian Removal Act, which was pursued by President Jackson, numerous tribes were settled into Oklahoma and guaranteed by treaties with the U.S. government that would be their new sovereign land. However, in 1890, along came the Dawes Allotment Act, which allowed for settlers to come in and to begin to settle upon the reservation land.
And play stakes, right?
Yeah, that's a perfect example of what happened after 1948 within the Zionist project that's now known as Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy, Israel, Fun Time Land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the apartheid and everything.
Yeah. It's definitely.
And the open air prisons. Did I mention the open air prisons there? You know, Gaza and Sheikh Zayed and all across the West Bank, Jordan, and I don't want to forget it. They also took land from Lebanon. They took land from Syria, Golan Heights. They took land from Urdun, from Jordan. They took land from Egypt. And they took land. All their neighbors. They'll take land from Cyprus eventually. They're already out there deep sea drilling for oil, stealing from Lebanon. And now
throwing a fucking pipeline through Lebanon too.
Because Portugal's like, hey, we've got
I'm sure we'll touch on that.
Zone. Portugal's saying we should be able to have the deep sea mining rights all over to like, I don't know if you need to peep what Portugal's doing there, Glory, because between the Azores and mainland the coast of Portugal and all points in between, they've gone the most aggressive after the latest renegotiation on the rights to the sea and deep sea mining. It's Portugal that's really showing their ass right now.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are going aggressive in their own territorial waters regarding specifically like testing machinery that's actually going to do the mining. But then there's also like global operations for commercial deep sea mining, and that's where you consider not only waters under countries is like individual jurisdiction, even though having jurisdiction over the ocean is a fundamentally fucking stupid idea to begin with. That's where you factor in stuff like
those are our waters.
Don't you want to argue about
it's like Mr. Fuller says.
Let's really decide once and for all, Glory, where is the continental shelf and who gets to completely destroy that part of the underworld under the sea?
There's a great saying by Buckminster
No,
Fuller.
99999. Let's privatize it. You can buy that fucking part of the ocean and you can deep sea drill the fuck out of it.
And we'll give you a royal title for that part of the ocean. By now, we'll give you your own Scottish royal title to that part of the great Challenger Deep in the Marianas Trench.
I heard there's plenty of deep sea waters available in Suriname and fucking Nigeria, right? And even in Ghana, they're looking for all kinds of different things under the ocean there.
Oh boy!
Dun, 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 dun.
So then it's pretty poetic then that Morocco's about to play Portugal in the World Cup next.
Oh, I want them
fucking
to beat Portugal.
Glory.
Fucking bad, bro. And you know what? I want them to do it with Cristiano Ronaldo in the game, because you know what? That motherfucker, he's holding Portugal back, believe it or not. Cristiano Ronaldo is aging, okay? He is not that good. He's holding Man United back. I can give you all the woes for that motherfucker as a Man United fan. I want to see his tears, bro.
Oh man.
And shout out to Morocco for having the fastest train in Africa right now.
Fucking
That's right. Going from Rabat down to Casablanca, and now they're upgrading the line out to Fez because they got an awesome bazaar out there. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, if you look at the fucking territory in North Africa, I mean, these are ancient fucking civilizations that have fucking morphed and become like so super advanced in their own ways, but they've been held back for so fucking long.
Yeah.
Bro,
And they're
and
finally
also,
coming back. Like, we're talking
it's in
Carthage,
North
fucking
Africa.
before that Egypt, and
Is
like
it Tunisia?
the reason for why they're being held back, do you think that's also a reason for why mainly European countries are the countries that like win the World Cup, that have like these good players, because they have these soccer programs? And I'm gonna suggest that the reason for why Brazil and Argentina, Uruguay, and some South American countries were able to win the World Cup is because during the time, like during the 30s, 40s, 50s, that's when these countries were prospering. They were about to become competitors to the northern countries. But then we know what happened with the coups that the U.S. helped install, the military interventions. But those youth soccer programs were still maintained that were really good. Do you guys think that that's an accurate assessment of what?
I definitely think it's an accurate assessment, but I mean, also
Without a fucking doubt.
look at the most recent World Cup winner. It's France, and if you look at
They
I don't
have
hate
that.
to be that person, but if you look at France's national team,
Yeah,
it's
a lot of them are African, and they were able to benefit off of that program that the French country has.
They are
that the African
descent.
countries aren't, like, don't have. So there's a lot of potential in like these athletes from Africa and from the Middle East and in Southern Asia, but they just don't. I guess they don't have the funding for these good athletic programs.
Like,
Yeah,
it's got to be taken into account
and-
too that like every time there's a fucking bomb dropped on one of those places, any one of those bombs can kill the next fucking star, man. Like, they're killing hope too. Because when you fucking kill hope, man, nobody want to go out and fucking play sports. They're all fucking shut up inside the house because they're terrified, and life is a fucking awful existence for them because of the fucking way that they've been fucking colonized for fucking ever and fucking kept back from everything they were able to fucking do and achieve their potential. They don't have the fucking freedom to fucking move forward. They're fucking chained.
Pretty much. Well, yeah,
it's
I was just gonna say that too. Like,
Add one more fuck to
when
that.
you don't get the exposure, that's another factor that not necessarily prevents people from gaining exposure on like a national scale within their own country, but on an international scale, say, majority Western audiences, they're not necessarily getting the exposure that someone who's, born and bred in a travel program would.
And that's also why the U.S. in the U.S. soccer is mainly like a rich person's sport, and the people who can't afford to pay for travel soccer or club soccer, they pick up an interest in something else like basketball or football.
Yeah, Franco, I really like that comment that Mariana just said too about AMLO, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, who's the current president of Mexico. Saying that he was going to pay to win and pay bribes all over the place, where the FIFA Olympics, then just count Mexico out. They ain't going out like that, Which AMLO's great on rhetoric, policy.
Yeah, I was about to say, AMLO, that's a bit rich coming from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit rich coming from you, AMLO. But I mean, there's bribery all over the place in FIFA. Like, y'all thought that it was bad with Qatar. That's just that's just the one that gained international exposure because of the fact that it was in a Middle Eastern country, that it was in an Arab country. And same thing with the IOC too. Maybe don't ask the IOC how that stadium in 2014 in Sochi, Russia was built, or how what happened in and around Beijing before the 2008 Olympics, or what happened in 2016 before the Rio Olympics, or that little part in 1936 where they decided to allow this country, Germany, in 1936 to host the Olympics, to really promote their image of national pride. Just
making him Time Magazine fucking Man of the Year y todo, bro.
But
Speaking of who made Time Magazine Person of the Year, Mr. Zelensky.
That's crazy.
Time is such a joke, dude.
For any Chilongo in Mexico City, particularly AMLO, to be poor mouthing, pagar para jugar, pay to play scheme and bribery and stuff. I get why Glory says it's rather rich, because I've been looking into the current mass transit projects and the contracting with the local Ciudadano city government and the municipales, and the bribery and corruption is what you would. It's just like any other part of North America.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, with all their internal problems, Mexico still decided to play an active role in the UN as the U.S. tried to force through their latest intervention scheme on Haiti. So, yeah.
Well, and Mexico's in such a
Speaking
fucking.
of that,
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw this out here.
Yeah.
In 1938, wow, who was the man
Yo,
of the
dude,
year? Look at that.
In I think it was 26 or 27, it was Mussolini on the fucking cover, because they were like, he's fucking gonna save the world from the fucking evil communists and the fucking something or others.
Wow.
Satan Claus, who can forget the hijinks at the Berlin Olympics? Can it get a sick health? All right.
People forget their history, huh?
Yeah,
or they only remember the parts that the elite wanted us to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The memory hole is wide and it has teeth, like that big pit next to Jabba the Hutt where people are thrown into the sand pit. Yeah. With teeth. It's a big memory hole. Now the memory hole's instantaneous. It's happening in real time, the memory holing and the platform. Yeah, I thought Twitter was different, and everyone wants to scream about Twitter like it's the be-all and end-all, when I could just as easily completely ignore Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
What is that? As if that was ever a free speech platform,
As if there's ever been a free speech platform, ever, in the history of the United States or in the fucking history of the world. Fucking Christ. They try to make the internet itself.
Well, what's lost on people is when they're in the United States and they're on these different websites, they don't realize that, unless you've used, your passport like the Yona here, and you get these cool South American visas going on, you know what I'm saying? Viva la República. And when you go around, you'll see the internet's different. Different countries have different filters and restrictions on the internet. And that's kind of shocking. When you go from country to country, you find out. That's why you use a VPN. Anyways.
Yeah.
So what would you guys say is the solution to this?
Watch Mob Psycho 100.
And why is that?
Because I love it. That's why.
No, but you're onto something there, though, because you do understand the world through some of these fiction animations, like in anime. You learn a lot of philosophy and stuff, especially after you've informed yourself about things that are happening in the world. You make these connections. I don't know. I just think you learn a lot of morals and principles when you watch anime. What are your guys' thoughts?
Okay, so I really apologize for how insufferably nerdy I'm about to be here. But the 3 opening themes to Mob Psycho 100. The first one, their main lyrics are, for the first one, if everyone is not special, maybe you can be what you want to be. For the second one, it's your life is your own. And then for the third one, it's one and only one. But the title is Mob Psycho, which denotes you're just someone in the mob. Meanwhile, throughout the anime, it's like depicting the main character's interactions with people, interactions with his community, and how he tries to use those to help himself, help improve himself as an individual, despite the fact that he's an incredibly powerful psychic. So like the show is this like constant great balance between individuality and community, and how you can bring those two things together. And there's also a bunch of other stuff. There's great animation, there's amazing fights, there's like wonderful humor, there's like wholesome content. And I'm gonna stop right there because I'm so sorry for going off on that. But I mean, it does, to kind of tie it back into what we were saying, and also relate it to the stories I was telling earlier about the all the people here expressing their support for Palestine. It's this idea of like solidarity and community while not falling into sort of such dogmatic thought, while not catering to groupthink, while trying your best to educate yourself and work it through with other people, so that way you can see through all these narratives that people try to use to weaponize that sort of concept of like mob rule. I know that sounds really convoluted, but I promise like it'll get fleshed out the more people start talking and stuff.
I'm glad you brought up the groupthink thing, because that's a big problem right now, because a lot of people are comforted by this idea that they're part of like a group or a tribe, and it hinders them. Like we have all this information available to us. Like if people look in the right places, right? There's people like Corey Morningstar, Whitney Webb putting out a lot of information about things happening in the world, and people in different countries, like the people at Glory links on things that are happening in Haiti, or things happening in Palestine. There's plenty of information out there about what's happening in the world, but then a lot of people I've noticed don't know what to do with that information, or they refuse to look further because they're comfortable where they're at. Like we saw with COVID, right? People didn't want to look further. They were comfortable where they were, because no one in their group was questioning things. And we see this with certain ideological groups, right? With Marxists or libertarians, and then there's different factions even within that. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
It's more of a challenge to try to have a discussion when you encounter someone that has clearly a delivered opinion rather than their own formed or developing opinion on a particular subject. Because when you're dealing with someone's delivered opinions, it's like rather than having a discussion about a different way of thinking or processing the way they view a situation, taking in a different perspective, for example, instead it's viewed as attacking a dogma or something that is agreed upon by others and thus is delivered opinion. And, I mean, much is made light today of labeling people as like non-playable characters. But, essentially when you find yourself being given token responses,
a verbatim even.
It's a challenge. Most of these are token responses or logical fallacies. And so for me, it's a matter of calling out red herrings and straw men and ad hominems and other things when I encounter them as the lowbrow sophistry it is, and hoping to advance to a higher level of rhetoric, or just walk away.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people are still attached to a monetary system. And the corruption in Mexico is fucking... The corruption in Mexico is getting far worse because ever since NAFTA, it was the real dollarization of Mexico, right? Like, and that's how the current
and hyper-exploitation.
Yes, like that's how the current empire has how the world hegemon in its current iteration, known as the United States. They've had 30 years now to thoroughly dollarize Mexico, right? And it's happening in the Southeast Pacific, like in the Micronesian and Polynesian islands too.
Yeah.
It's taking what used to be the commons and what people just used to grow up into, and it's dollarizing it, and it's making everyone trade in this paper bullshit that's supposed to mean a whole lot of fucking this and that. And then
it's a religion.
Look at the value of the dollar against the Mexican peso right now. It's the dollar's never been stronger in Mexico. Totally backing up what you're talking about. I'm just saying there's the evidence speaking to what you're speaking of there.
Yeah.
You got a lot of expats moving down there too, though.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And that's how expats are really fucking having an easy time, like especially if they came from some type of money or they had a lot of good savings or something like that.
It's like a form of gentrification on a nation level.
Yes,
it is 100% gentrification.
As my man Hayona over here has been saying, as this man's been saying over here, the Reconquista is here. They missed some shit. They missed some shit the first time.
I like the
around.
accurate pointing.
You gotta come back around.
Like,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no. Well, it's because, since things in the United States and other Western countries around Europe in particular are going into such shite states, people are literally looking towards places like Mexico and towards various African countries as like a new conquest, because you literally have these, people you could call venture capitalists, or who I like to call fucking vultures, going, ooh, look at these markets, these untapped markets in these places that I don't know shit about. I'm rich, I have money, I can totally move here and exploit the shit out of it. And that's what's being encouraged, as opposed to, hey, maybe like you can try and actually empower your own community to help fight out of this. Or if you are a traveler, or if you are someone who's naturally nomadic, because trust me, I get it, you don't have to be a fucking colonizing asshole about it. You can go there and be respectful and help people build up their own community and build a resistance to this kind of shit that's left them in the conditions where people feel they're so easily exploitable. So
it's really depressing to me. I get so enthusiastic about new rail projects and mass transit projects because, anything that moves more people and goods without building more highways is normally a plus to me. And so I've been watching with interest in southern Mexico, for example, down in the states of Quintana Roo and Yucatan, where AMLO is shepherding through the Tren Maya project, where they're wanting to connect from the existing rail system over by the Strait of Teotihuacan and Oaxaca across to Cancun, where they have an ancient railroad that's been, abandoned for some time. And they're wanting to upgrade to a standard gauge railroad, and they've already done it. They're in the process of building this now, and the amount of land that they're taking for it, and specifically the language around it, is all about, we're going to bring in all these tourists, and we'll be able to extract more gas and other natural resources. And I mean, it's just so depressing, like I want to see rail, but not if they're going to clear out half a mile wide on each side of the track. But reality check, Yona. Railroads are normally about extraction and development. Just ask Africa when it comes to all these Chinese standard gauge rail projects. It's the exact same thing. They're building these things through Nairobi and elsewhere to get to brand new mines, more rare earth minerals. It's the same story over and over again.
mm-hmm.
Anyway.
So I have this right here because this was shared to me earlier by Satan Claus over here. So what can you tell us here?
Wait.
The dollar is apparently over.
Franco, I gotta stop you. Can you please close out of the pop-up ad that's blocking the title?
Yes.
It's true.
Do you need money?
This?
Yes.
All right, hang on.
I can breathe again.
Let me share it again so that I can share the audio as well. But apparently the U.S. dollar is over.
Oh yeah.
What's going on here?
Well, the International Bank of Settlements is having a hard time finding $80 trillion or some shit like that. And most of these fucking bets and fucking loans were taken out over the past couple of years. They've just been pumping fucking trillions of dollars in debt, and now it's all going poofty. And if my theory is correct, since history moves in cycles, we are right on time for the dollar's collapse as the world's reserve currency. And historically speaking, this has happened many, many other times before, when the debts are called in and there is zero liquidity to back it. It happens every 100 or somewhere between 80 and 120 years, because a currency's debt cycle is 80 years long, or thereabouts. So we are at peak currency bubble. And the next thing that happens historically is hyperinflation, and then a currency collapse in which a new currency comes to take its place. So we are watching the dethroning and enthroning period of world currency. It's fucking awful, but it's fascinating.
Whoa.
Well, of course, it was Nixon who took the U.S. dollar off the gold-backed currency and made
Yeah.
the deal with the devil and guaranteed Saudi Arabia that the United States would always provide F-15s and bombs and bullets and everything else in exchange, under the caveat that the Saudi Arabian oil company, known as Aramco, would only market their sweet Brent delicious crude in U.S. dollars. And they've already reneged on that and begun making transactions, actually months, if not more than a year ago now. They've begun making direct transactions with Chinese in the renminbi and the Chinese yuan, as well as with Russian trades directly in rubles from Saudi Arabia. So it kind of feels like de-dollarization was a thing and it's ongoing. But now that the petrodollar ship has kind of sailed, at this point, it's like Wile E. Coyote has already walked off the cliff, Franco, and it's just a matter of when he looks down as to when.
Right. No, what's the timestamp here that you want me to show? Or I can just start it.
I would
just real quick before this, some predictive programming in the new Ghost in the Shell, where they allude to in the year 2025, there's a global reset called the Great Debt Reset or something, where basically the central banks and everyone it's called the G8 default. Basically, it's where the governments of the world default entirely, and everyone loses all of their shit. Everything is hyperinflated. And in that Ghost in the Shell, the new one series, it blows me away because there's a scene with an old woman who's literally paying to go get suicide in Switzerland.
Oh my god!
And one of the main characters is helping her. Like, it's fucking absurd, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
To bring back into fiction.
Dystopian,
There's my Mad Jack over there.
Yeah, back to anime too.
Yeah,
Right?
anime even.
Yeah, recent anime too, man.
This video, he kind of covers the basics real quick, and then he gets into the nitty-gritty details about it, which, like, I'm a nerd about, and I'll fucking listen to that shit all day. But you should probably, like, only play the first 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
Bank of International Settlements released a bombshell report detailing over $80 trillion worth of short-term dollar debt that exists globally off balance sheets. This means that regulators, central banks, analysts have literally no way of identifying where this debt is, exactly how much of it there is, and that means they can't come up with any potential solutions should there be a dollar funding squeeze. And during both the Great Financial Crisis and during March of 2020, when there were massive crises that happened really quickly, there were absolutely these dollar funding squeezes that caused major problems to the global financial system. And as the title of the Bank of International Settlements report points out, this problem is huge. The debt is missing and it is growing. We're going to go through this report almost line by line here. I'm going to point out all the important takeaways. And number two, I'm going to break it down in a way that's easy to understand, because despite the fact that this whole area, this dollar swaps, currency swaps, foreign exchange swaps, it's a complicated area, but for our purposes, just for what we need to know to live our day-to-day lives and to anticipate what kind of financial problems might come up that will impact us, it doesn't have to be. So we're going to look at this very simply. And if you haven't heard, I am currently running a Christmas sale on my portfolio allocation course. If you want to make sure that whether we get inflation, deflation crashes, liquidity squeezes. As you can see, the title of this report is Dollar Debt in Foreign Exchange Swaps and Forwards, Huge, Missing, and Growing. This report is on the Bank of International Settlements website. You can find it by just Googling Dollar Debt in FX Swaps, BIS, and it'll be one of the first results. There's a bunch of articles written about it that link back to it as well. So first of all, there's an explainer. FX swaps, forwards, and currency swaps, they create forward dollar payment obligations that do not appear on balance sheets and are missing in the standard debt statistics. In simple terms, this basically means that all of these different instruments all basically have one result, and that means at some point you're going to have to pay back dollars, and all of these instruments don't show up on balance sheets. Therefore, there's no way to accurately see where it all lies, who is overexposed, and how much exactly it all adds up to. Breaking it down, they know non-banks outside the United States owe as much as 25 trillion, and that is up from a lower number of 17 trillion in just 2016. When we look at banks outside of the United States, the number is 35 trillion. Much of this debt is very short term, and the need to roll it over means that a dollar funding squeeze could happen. And we'll get into the details of this, but that just means that, every day or every week or every month you could have this coming due. You need to locate those dollars to be able to pay them back. This means that in a crisis, when lending suddenly dries up, you could have major spillover effects as everybody's trying to roll this over all at the same time. They're also going to mention policy responses and recommendations because central bank swap lines have no visibility about where all of the short-term debt is located. Now, I can't find the exact press release right now on the Fed's website, but sometime in late 2020, maybe it was early 2021, the Federal Reserve made a change to their swap facility and basically opened it up both for repo and for their swap lines, so that if anything like this were to happen again, it would be much easier for the Federal Reserve to use those existing facilities that they just permanently established and say, hey, now anybody that needs this temporary dollar funding can get it. Because at the time in 2020, in March, they had to set these up as temporary facilities. They didn't exist yet, just to deal with all of the short-term dollar needs that everybody had. So as of right now, the Federal Reserve has existing facilities now that they've set up that are permanent. They're not really being used right now, but in the case of a crisis where everybody suddenly comes scrambling for dollars, they would have the ability to have people access the Federal Reserve directly for these dollar funding needs. But still, there's no visibility into where all of these short-term needs are and how much of it there is coming from each area and what other currencies might be on the other side of those specific trades. Don't worry, we'll get into that. So here's how it works.
You can probably
FX swap, FX stands for foreign exchange.
Yeah. So comments there.
Guys, anytime we need to, that old money printer can just go brr again.
So basically what the problem is that the dollar has been lent out to other fucking central currencies out there, and they can't figure out who owes what. They've so badly oversold the dollar that now there's everyone realizes that it's worth jack shit. And that is why Saudi Arabia is making the move. This is not some crazy conspiracy theorist right-wing thing that I'm about to say. But Saudi Arabia and the traditional OPEC is making a move closer to BRICS and China especially.
Because China and Russia have big dollars and buying gold. They got gold to back up their shit. What does the dollar have to back it up? Nothing but nukes.
Unicorn fruits?
Well, so there's a great term by Martin Armstrong on this, and he calls it the sovereign debt crisis, which is basically exactly what you just explained, is that no one knows who owes what where. Because all this, we need to realize this very importantly. When you go to get a mortgage, which by the way, death, gauge, so death note, basically death contract is what that word means. When you go to get that from the bank and say you get $100,000 loan, right? The bank doesn't have $100,000 on hand to give you. Now, it used to be they would have to do fractional reserve, so they would have to hold 10% of that 100,000, which would be 10,000, right? Now they don't have to do that anymore. They literally just print that money out of air. Now this goes on every day, millions and millions of times for years and years. And now what happens when this whole stack of cards starts unraveling? No one wants to come out and say the obvious. The emperor has no clothes.
Yes.
So that's exactly why Saudi Arabia did what it did.
So what should people do, like what working class people do in preparation for this dollar crash?
Okay, so
because clearly crypto's not the answer.
Me and Jack were actually talking about this shit last night,
and I've had you guys on to talk about
this. me and Jack were talking about the crypto shit happening over a year ago, and we kind of predicted the exact same thing that happened. Like,
now we didn't point out that it would be FTX, but we did point that there would be 3 crashes and that the market would be completely wiped out by one of these major monopolies. Again, when I was saying the arguments against this whole decentralized talking point, was that no, you have groups like Digital Currency Group, DCG, who had millions, or I think it was billions, to FTX. So this is all related, man. You can't tell me that Barry Silbert from Digital Currency Group gave that money to freaking FTX, knowing
after he got it from the FBI.
Yeah, after he literally was number 4th Bitcoin holder after the FBI. I mean, come on.
Yeah, dude. Like, come on, dude. So, so crypto's not the answer. So
another thing you can do to prepare for the end times, folks. I'm just saying, act now while it's cheap. Great Yuletide idea. Get you one of those high Yona deep sea royal titles like mine. Baron Turd, Lord Brown Eye. Get yours now.
I don't know, the idea that we should move on to the next currency. Yo, dude, if you got a dope man that's selling you some ridiculously dog shit cut, disgusting dope, the solution is not to go find a fucking dope man with some better dope. The solution is to put down the fucking pipe. So, what I mean by that is it is time to detach entirely from a monetary system of exchange.
And instead move to what?
Far outside the box.
So
that is the realist position. Unless we choose that we're going to go right the fuck back around in a circle and we'll end up right the fuck back where we started.
So we go back to a barter system. Think about this. More than half of the weeds that I've consumed in the last month, I did not give cash for it. Instead, I exchanged. Let's say it was a type of food that's round and cut into slices and covered with cheese and various toppings. But anyways, with that commodity, I was able to trade gram for gram, slice for slice, pound for pound, deep dish for deep dish. See how that works? Dollars not even necessary.
Well, so
they got food, I got high. Everybody's happy.
Well, so bartering as well. You're not sorry, I would almost phrase this wrong, but you're avoiding the state almost entirely when you barter because there's no record of that. It's just like cash. It's one of the best systems we could possibly ever use because it makes the most sense. There's Franco. There's also things that the Venus Project, which I have my own concerns against, but they have a thing they're proposing called a resource-based economy, and I need to look further into it. But essentially, to me, I think that sounds great. I'll give an example of what I would call a resource-based economy, and that's that we build food forests, right? That's an economic driver. Is that we all gather up neighbors and we say, hey, let's build a food forest that anyone can take any food that they need from, and we'll all spend some time and do this as a community. That's one solution where I could see a resource-based economy, meaning once you solve Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, water, all that stuff, you can actually start focusing on much, much more. Now, my concerns on a resource-based economy model is if it does lean to more of the extremist views on that, which would be that there would be a redistribution of said resources. I don't agree on that part. I think that you're going to face more hostility.
Even today, in the year 2022, all across the United States and across, where English is spoken, the United States dollar is still equanimous with the term buck and buckskin, which refers to our
we talked about that
economy, where everything that you traded was worth so many bucks. I'll trade you this. This is worth $5. That's worth $10. So you give me two of those, which is both worth $5, and this is worth $10, and we got an even trade. And no buckskins are involved. It's just a metric for what something is worth. And so even today, people still say, you know, how many bucks is it going to cost me? You know, they don't literally have a suitcase full of buckskins, although depending on which band is on tour, that may be the case. But
that really interests me, like what you mentioned, what Jack mentioned there about food forests, and what you guys are talking about, the barter system, because we need to understand and realize that money is an illusion. The monetary system is
fucking mind control.
Yeah, things don't have to be this way, but people don't think outside the box because of we just have been indoctrinated into the system, and we think that this is how things are supposed to be. So I'm just imagining now, like, is it like possible to grow an entire forest of food? I think it can be.
I don't know. Why don't we ask the people that've been doing it
done before? It was done, exactly, for the majority of humans' existence through hunting and gathering, right?
Like small scale. They do that on a small scale. There's like several communities littered throughout the world, honestly, where you have them, you know, growing food in their own small farms. And I don't mean like, you know, on some industrial shit where they're putting in some synthetic fertilizers that are tearing up the water supply in the ocean when the runoff gets to it. I'm talking about, like, you know, farms that like have actual flowers in them, because, you know, that's a foreign concept in modern industrial farming, or, you know, where the animals can roam free. And like you said, they grow other forms of vegetation that promotes biodiversity and healthy soil, as opposed to just draining the soil with these monocrops that in the end they don't produce better quality or higher yields in the long term. In fact, this was in the Vandana Shiva documentary, Seeds of Vandana Shiva, highly recommend for anyone. But there was a statistic, and I forgot what it was, but most of the food we consume comes from small farmers, because that large-scale industrial farming, that just produces food that either A, gets wasted because it sucks, or B, it goes to animals. It goes to feed cows where you don't even consume the whole cow. Like that's something that we could also learn from when it comes to food forest, is you have to be, you know, resourceful, and you have to be mindful about how you consume animals. Like, listen, I'm not like vegan, bro. Like, I'm sorry. That's not the sustainable way forward. You just have to be mindful about how you consume animals, as it's a part of the circle of life that we all partake in.
Being respectful.
Right.
Yeah, it's like how Yona, like we would talk about the demise of the American buffalo with Yona, and how, like, when Native Americans, they wouldn't just eat all of the buffalo, they would use the skin to build and to wear, or like, you know, one of the things that, like, use the bones for stock.
You know.
Yeah, no.
And I think,
and like these slaves, for example. Caribbean slaves turned oxtail, the literal tail of an animal that no one would consider eating, into one of the fucking greatest pieces of meat you could ever consume. And now all these bougie ass motherfuckers are like, oh yes, we can have raised oxtail for $70, please. It's like, brother, I can't go get a little bit of oxtail for just like $7. Like, shut up.
It's the same thing in South America.
So just taking as much as you need rather than like overabundance of it, which is a big problem of what we have now. Like, people throw away their groceries.
Right.
And
the grocery stores too, they throw it away, and
they put it under
millions of people starving.
Get it either.
Yes.
It's strange. You know, I was going to speak to one thing. It seems like consolidated animal feeding operations, or factory farms, as it were, whether it's monocrops or mono herds kept under roof, you know, just the most deplorable, unspeakable conditions. This is all towards breeding dependence, individuation and dependence, where each and every person lives in their own pod. They don't really have human relationships IRL. They can just live in a metaverse and everything is delivered to them, which is the antithesis of where we're going to be going in the future as that system is collapsing around us. And that's interdependence, where we have these relationships and thus we're able to know and trade and contribute all of our different skill sets and trades, whether you're a baker or a butcher or a candlestick maker or make them funky beats or edible treats like the Yona. Whatever it is, we're able to have our own economy. You don't need dollars, as Saudi Arabia has figured out. And so I guess in the end, Saudi Arabia is like, they can always buy MiGs instead of F-15s because at least,
Or that badass new Chinese bomber that's coming out, the fucking pride and joy of the fucking People's Liberation Army. It's going to be fucking sold all over the world for the people. But so what we're talking about here is like a reimagination of all basics, because most people, when they present a solution, what they're saying is, how do we buttress the current way that the world is? And I'm like, yo, the world is fucked, homie.
Yeah, we got to think outside the box.
Fucking monoculture. We
don't
have
to try the same thing
extinction
over and over again, right?
Well, and that's why Food Forest,
what you're showing here with Food Forest, I have to give credit where it's due. The Cubans have been absolute world pioneers in permaculture and being able to transform urban landscapes into very high production, high yield, year-round cultivation, and making Food Forest literally in the middle of city parks, but stacking them vertically and being able to recreate their own temperate zones and warehouses. And of course, they've then gone around the world and shown other people how to do this. So the Cubans are at the cutting edge of this here. Shout out Cuba.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man. It's possible. And we can use science for these kind of things to learn how to build our own biodome inside the fucking planet instead of just destroying every fucking thing we touch.
It's incredible when you see Cubans go into an entire paved parking lot, keep it as a parking lot, but turn it into a gravel parking lot, and then pergola the entire top and grow it out with beans and squash. And it's like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this.
That's the idea of Food Forest.
How likely is it to sustain this with the current people in power right now? Do you think that they're going to make this illegal at some point?
Oh yeah, they'll absolutely try to. But that's the thing is there's also what's called guerrilla food foresting, which is where and this is super key, is that you literally just go buy some seeds and you buy them for your zone, right? They need to be within your zone. So you're talking $1 or something, and you go throw them in a parking lot. You go throw them somewhere, and you just do that. You just, the people in mass doing this, you create situations to where food is so abundant that just exactly like in Cuba, there's food, people are going into bushes, pulling out squashes, beans, all kinds of stuff that's just growing abundantly. And now again, there's also the professional food forest, which I think those are probably more longer term, because they actually do those in layers, fully regenerative cycling, meaning every plant is a supportive plant for another plant. There is no plant planted that does not support the entire ecosystem.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
naturally, what happens is the food forests themselves, because they're in such synergistic motion and tied in with nature, they don't have as much pests. They don't need pesticides. Imagine that. If you let plants do what plants do best, you don't need pesticides.
Right.
Of course, yeah. And then
you can
all
grow
the negative
peppermint,
things that happen with
and all that other
pesticides.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That keeps
It really is a food cycle. And in some cases, you can actually see the food cycle in one shot with your own eyes. Like my friend who has a single wide trailer in the eastern Kentucky wilderness, probably about a 30-minute drive from here. And it's far from any sewer lines or septic tanks or lateral lines. There's just a straight pipe going out of one side of the trailer that feeds into their garden that grows tomatoes. And then when you go inside, they eat tomatoes every day, which are filled with tomato seeds. And then you can literally walk outside, and the tomato seeds are going out the brown drippy pipe and back into the garden. and planting more tomatoes, already fertilized. And there it is. Circle of life, Elton. Play that Elton John right there.
Well, you even think of something like this. Like, what if you got up? Like, I'm just thinking of practical ways to do this. What if you got together with your local group, or like if you could find a group that could find some land to do this on? And again, you may need permission, the guerrilla style, not so much. But what if you said, look, everyone just dedicate an hour to come out to this property a week. It's just everyone involved. So you have 10 people, you've got enough coverage for more than once each day. Everyone just volunteers 1 hour, do the honor system, because you're going to know if someone's not actually doing something. And that's the thing, is you get enough people doing this, like it's basically shifting the scarcity model that we currently live on, which again, the scarcity model is complete bullshit. It's that we're overpopulating and all this other eugenicist crap. Over to the abundance model, so much to where you create such rapid abundance in local communities that you allow rapid decentralization, because communities now have Maslow hierarchy of needs fulfilled and can actually take care of themselves. And that's the big thing.
Yes, and that's
it cannot be stated enough. No pesticides.
Yeah. You know, you're really onto something here, Jack and Franco. You guys are onto something. We already have mapped out with GIS software in the United States what are called food deserts.
Yeah.
Areas that are far from
I used to live in them.
We should take that to our advantage in terms of organization. And at the worst of the food deserts is really the best place to have these seed projects to launch having our own food production, and thus being able to produce our own leafy greens, our own meats, even with, free range chicken, rabbit meat, other alternative sources of food that can be made homegrown as a cottage industry in these areas that suffer from food desertification the worst, where they've already been abandoned by superstores and super groceries like Safeway and Kroger and the like.
I just want to show this real quick.
Helping the communities.
Exactly, yeah. And Jack, you pointed out something great there. Like, once they have their needs fulfilled, their basic needs, their Maslow hierarchy of needs, like they don't have to worry about finding food, because that's the main stressor that a lot of people have, a lot of working class people have. That's why they have to work all these jobs. Once they have that need fulfilled, they have all this time to work on themselves, take care of their mental health, and then they can think more clearly and solve all these other problems. Right. What are your guys' thoughts on, not that, but this right here? Marxist Saw says they won't have to make it illegal. They will make it to where it's impossible to be self-sustainable long-term using capitalistic market. The factory will always outproduce farm at market value. So what are you guys' thoughts on that? That's exactly
the problem, and why we have to detach from the monetary system.
Hold on. Just real quick on that. I think there may be some confusion. In a food forest, you're not paying someone for that food. It is literally free. You walk up and take it. That you would never plan a food forest without that in your mind. It is a completely community-driven product, meaning anyone can grab that food from that food forest. There is no capitalistic market that the food is sold on to compete with factory produced. Now, will factory things yield more? Yes, they will, and that may drive market conditions for people doing that. But just think of it this way: if you know you can get something locally and walk less than maybe a half mile or a quarter mile from where you are and get real food from the ground that you know where it came from, are you going to do that, or go to a market where you're going to get pesticide-laden toxic food?
And not to mention, that goes towards what I was saying earlier as well, regarding like the massive yields produced by these huge ass fucking like industrial style factory farms using methods like those that Bill Gates pushed in Africa. They produced higher yields in the short term, but in terms of the degradation in the long term that's being done to the soil, in terms of how much of that food is actually either A, wasted, or B, given to livestock that also gets wasted, you'd actually be, again, I forget the statistic, but you'd actually be surprised to find out that much more of the food that people consume is produced by smaller farmers. So even though these large industrial farms produce huge amounts of yield, they're not necessarily the ones that are feeding us.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you the key here, Franco, is local sovereignty. In order to really, for a people, for a community to have real sovereignty, no offense to globalism, but what Jack and others are talking about, Lori and others are talking about, is localism. Because when you have the local ability to produce your own food and food stores throughout the year, you now produce real sovereignty as a people. Whereas anytime you're no longer able to produce your own food locally and your own, goods necessary for daily life, now you already have to compromise some of your sovereignty in order to have free trade and globalism and other things, and whatever local industries you may have at that point now have to compete on the global stage in a capitalist sense. Whereas when you can produce locally, you can have a completely independent economy that has nothing to do with fiat currency or fractional based banking or anything else. You can have a true sovereign exchange amongst your own people between goods of real value and labor
and
of
with
real
food
value.
forest, you don't need to barter. You wouldn't need to barter food because you would already be produced. You're 100% correct on that, and that's really where I see it. Is like when people say decentralization,
nothing
this
is
the way
more
to do
local than that, right? If people could just walk out into a food forest, that's the ultimate in localism and the complete antithesis to globalism and the food deserts of today. It is
100%. It's an inversion of our current dominating system. It's a complete it's an inversion to the dominating system. And again, I'll cover later on about non-supportive dominators, which I think is definitely key. But this is a way to invert the dominating system that says, no, you must buy this in a market. Because again, most people don't realize that like companies like Driscoll and all these other ones, they grow the GMO pesticide foods right next door to the organic food. So you can't tell me that there's not going to be runoff. If someone has a food forest, they're going to know that they're getting good food. That leads to quality of health, which leads to a lot of the illnesses that we see in our modern society, like diabetes, type 1 and 2, all kinds of stuff going away because people are not sick. They're not chronically ill from the food that they eat. And that really hit home with me for having lived in a food desert. You can get ho-hos and you can probably get some Twinkies. Like that's maybe, you can sometimes get sunflower seeds, maybe some spicy ones, barbecue ones, but
gas station food.
You're fucking out of luck, man. Like, yeah, it's nasty ass food. And that food, like I never felt worse in my life than when I was stuck in a food desert because you were literally having to make decisions on, can I afford the gas to go to an actual grocery store or I'm going to have to live off this crap for the next week?
Yeah. And like, I think what we have to really pull upon here is the common thread of what we're talking about is we are talking about reorganizing our own minds on the individual level to learn how to live with nature and by the laws of nature, not over top of it and dominating it. Because this is the way of the world. This is a dog-eat-dog world. And it starts with how we fucking dominate the fucking environment that we're around and then each other. And we have this fucking entire system where it is domination of nature at all costs.
And it's not
because you want to remain civilized or whatever.
This isn't a great mystical thing. Nature is life. Life is a vibration. Life is a constant musical song. So you have to stop screaming at the top of your lungs, get quiet enough to listen and hear what key it's in so that you can now sing in tune. But what's key? In harmony with an awareness of everything else, instead of it all just being about special old you. Because the more you get into individuation, it's not the key to independent living. Rather, individuation just slowly but surely gets you more and more into your own prison, your own pod, your own box, more and more removed from IRL human relationships, which is the absolute key to all of this. It's the absolute key. We all have different talents and different skill sets that we bring together. And it's in the personal relationship, getting to know your neighbors. And when it comes to diet, for me, there's two simple rules. Number one, if you always read the ingredients. If it looks like you need a Bunsen burner and maybe Walter White's help to figure out what the ingredients are about alkyltocopherol and partially hydrogenated and high fructose this and whoa, slow down. And the other rule is if there's more than 5 ingredients, put it down, walk away. If there's more than 5 ingredients, that's too much. too much.
And also, natural flavors can literally be anything.
Yeah,
so
that's how they try to get
insane.
people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like
that was about
natural
natural
flavors. Yeah. For
5% juice and other natural flavors.
Like
Always with
sometimes
that
it's
shit,
like
right?
beaver anal gland juice. Like they actually use that for flavor.
Yeah, it's Generation Z eating ass, but it's beaver ass. All right.
You know, it's
Beaver,
funny that
hold
you
on,
mentioned
hold on.
that,
My mind's
Franco.
blown. Say
Because
that again.
a
Beaver
good friend of
anal
mine-
gland?
They use when it says natural flavors,
discovered
sometimes
that?
it's a beaver anal glands.
Mhm.
Yep.
There was either a lot of some compounds
Or like
involved in discovering
Beetlejuice,
that,
but
or
I don't
some
think
really
Beetlejuice is as
disturbed
bad
individuals.
as
Don't
like,
say it one more time. Don't even say it one more time. Don't do it.
So
anal juice?
Franco, I was going to tell you, a friend of mine, LD over at Grand Theft World with my buddies Richard Grove and all them.
Mr.
He
Drizzle?
was on my show the other day and talking about Albert Bourla, who is the current president CEO of Pfizer Corporation, who's actually a Greek veterinarian. And he had a video where Al Bourla of Pfizer was pushing a Pfizer veterinary medication called Improvac, which is a vaccine that they could give to pigs and boars that they're growing for meat, bacon and such. And the problem with male boars is down there they have an anal gland that produces a terrible foul smell that's called boar taint. And what they found with the Improvac was it's an mRNA vaccine for pigs that chemically castrates them, which prevents the secretion of the foul smell from the boar ass. Thus, no more boar taint, thanks to the Pfizer chemical castration agent Improvac. Act now, pig farmers, and smell no more boar taint ever again.
Jeez.
Because they found out with the mRNA that they're able to chemically castrate because the lipid nanoparticle was concentrating in the ovarian cells and in the developing spermatozoa. But I'm sure it's not doing that in humans. I'm sure, because I know they tested first.
When we're talking about like food forests and things like that, it doesn't mean that like we're doing away with technology, right? Which is like living with technology and with nature. Like, you need nature. You're part of nature. So it's ridiculous to me when I see people that are like, oh, drill away, destroy the rainforest. Unfortunately, I'm starting to see that a lot in like left-wing circles.
And that's the blood of the earth, man. Like, we're
Yeah.
taking the blood out of Mother Earth and just gorging it and expecting that, like, that's going to have non-karmic ramifications for the rest of Jesus.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with
it's
using
a
technology to
response to
harmonize.
crises that are totally manufactured by the elites too. So it's just so inherently reactionary, and it's in no way, shape, or form going to improve the situation at hand.
They think that anything environmentalist is like co-opted. Some of it is co-opted, like a lot of these green activist movements. And if you want to read more on that, look up Wrong Kind of Green.
Cory Morningstar.
Like, yeah, Cory Morningstar. Sorry, I was about to sneeze.
Both of them are great, honestly.
Yeah, and Vandana Shiva. You learn more
Shiva's
about
amazing.
how these environmental activist movements are co-opted. Look into like conflicts of interest. Look into how they're funded by the people that they're supposed to be fighting against, right? Like the Sierra Club, 350.org. And what's the other one? Sunrise Movement.
Yeah. Well, anytime, everything can be fucking co-opted. I mean, Campaign Zero was a pretty legit operation until it became Black Lives Matter, right? Like, everything can be fucking co-opted. And as soon as it gains legitimacy, guess what? Guess what?
Co-opted.
It's fucking co-opted.
Yeah, once you see it advertised on mainstream TV, then it's co-opted.
I gotta say, all things said and done, when it comes to India is such an uplift to my spirit and a constant shining inspiration of pushback against the BT crops, pushback against GMOs, pushback against testing unsafe, unapproved medical products, whatever they may be, against the general populations, whether it's Uttar Pradesh or Gujarat or Punjabi or Kerala or other parts of India. India's at this, like, take for example, farmer Billy Gates of Microsoft is persona non grata in India. because of what they got caught doing with the Gardasil trials and the cover-ups. And I mean, there's been a lot of
you
bad stuff
had
going in the
Indian,
global south, as you know,
yeah.
Franco, whether it's in India, Africa, or South America and Latin America at large. They always want to test on the global south like a bunch of guinea pigs.
Well, I mean, Indian farmers were committing suicide because of what BT cotton did to them. So, I mean, yeah,
every 20
they have
seconds.
such vehement opposition to them. And I mean, like, you know, a great example to me as well is Haiti. I mean, these are farmers that literally took Monsanto seeds and burned them. Like they said, nah, nah. So yeah, definitely that. Yeah.
I want to share this speech real quick that Jack Sit sent us. So this is valedictorian speaks out against schooling. So what parts of this you want me to play, Jack? Or you want me to play all of it and then you let me know when to pause so you can comment?
We have to play the whole thing.
It's superbly good from beginning to end. So
okay,
it really is. Like it holds it up. So like we can just start it, and if we want to pause it, we can pause it.
Okay.
Damn, what's up, Dr. Nathan?
How long then? Asked the student. 30 years, replied the master. But I do not understand, said the disappointed student. At each time that I say I will work harder, you say that it will take me longer. Why do you say that? Replied the master, when you have one eye on the goal, you only have one eye on the path. This is the dilemma that I face within the American public education system. We are so focused on a goal, whether it be passing a test or graduating as first in the class. However, in this way, we do not really learn at our fullest. We do whatever it takes to achieve our original objective. Some of you may be thinking, well, if you pass a test or become valedictorian, didn't you learn something? Well, yes, you learned something, but not all that you could have. Perhaps you only learned how to memorize names, places, and dates to later on forget in order to clear your mind for the next test. School is not all that it can be. Right now, it's a place for most people to determine that their goal out is to get out as soon as possible. I am now accomplishing that goal. I am graduating. I should look at this as a positive experience, especially being at the top of my class. However, in retrospect, I cannot say that I'm any more intelligent than my peers. I can attest that I am only the best at doing what I'm told. Yet here I stand, and I'm supposed to be proud that I have completed this period of indoctrination. I will leave in the fall, and I will go on to the next phase expected of me in order to receive a paper document that certifies that I'm capable of work. But I contest that I'm a human being, not just a worker. I'm a thinker, an adventurer. A worker is someone who is trapped within repetition, a slave of the system set up before him. But now I have successfully shown that I was the best slave. I did what I was told to the extreme. While others sat in class and doodled to later become great artists, I sat in class to take notes to become a great test taker. While others would come to class without their homework done because they were reading about an interest of theirs, I never missed an assignment. While others were creating music and writing lyrics, I decided to do extra credit, even though I didn't even need it. So I wonder, why did I even want this position? Sure, I earned it, but what will come of it? When I leave educational institutionalism, will I be successful or forever lost? I have no clue about what I want to do with my life. I have no interest because I saw every subject as a study, as work, and I excelled at every subject just for the purpose of excelling and not learning. And quite frankly, I'm very scared. John Taylor Gatto, a retired school teacher and activist critical of compulsory schooling, asserts, we could encourage the best qualities of youthfulness, curiosity, adventure, resilience, the capacity for surprising insight simply by being more flexible about time, texts, and tests, by introducing kids into truly competent adults, and by giving each student what autonomy he or she needs in order to take a risk every now and then. But we don't do that. Between these cinder block walls, we are all expected to be the same. We are trained to ace every standardized test, and those who deviate and see light through a different lens are worthless to the scheme of public education, and therefore viewed with contempt. H.L. Mencken wrote in the American Mercury for April 1924 that the aim of public education is not to fill the young of this species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is the aim in the United States. To illustrate this idea, doesn't it perturb you to learn about the idea of critical thinking? Is there really such a thing as uncritically thinking? To think is to process information in order to form an opinion. But if we are not critical when processing this information, are we really thinking? Or are we mindlessly accepting other opinions as truth? This was happening to me, and if it wasn't for the rare occurrence of an avant-garde 10th grade English teacher, Donna Bryan, I would have been doomed. I am now enlightened, but my mind still feels disabled. I must retrain myself and constantly remember how insane this ostensibly sane place really is. And now here I am in a world guided by fear, a world suppressing the uniqueness that lies inside each of us, a world where we can either acquiesce to the inhuman nonsense of corporatism and materialism or insist on change. We are not enlivened by an educational system that clandestinely sets us up for jobs that could be automated, for work that need not be done, for enslavement without fervency, for meaningful achievement. We have no choices in life when money is our motivational force. Our motivational force ought to be passion, but this is lost from the moment we step into a system that trains us rather than inspires us. We are more than robotic bookshelves, conditioned to blurt out facts we were taught in school. We are all very special. Every human on this planet is very special. So aren't we all deserving of something better? Of using our minds for innovation rather than memorization, for creativity rather than futile activity, for rumination rather than stagnation. We are not here to get a degree to then get a job so we can consume industry-approved placation after placation. There is more and more still. The saddest part is that the majority of students don't have the opportunity to reflect as I did. The majority of students are put through the same brainwashing techniques in order to create a complacent labor force working in the interests of large corporations and secretive government. And worst of all, they are completely unaware of it. I will never be able to turn back these 18 years. I can't run away to another country with a different education system, perhaps meant to enlighten rather than condition. This part of my life is over, and I want to make sure that no other child will have his or her potential suppressed by powers meant to exploit and control. We are human beings. We are thinkers, dreamers, explorers, artists, writers, engineers. We are anything we want to be, but only if we have an educational system that supports us rather than holds us down. A tree can grow, but only if its roots are given a healthy foundation. For those of you out there that must continue to sit in desks and yield to the authoritarian ideologies of instructors, do not be disheartened. You still have the opportunity to stand up, ask questions, be critical, and create your own perspective. Demand a setting that will provide you with intellectual capabilities that allow you to expand your mind instead of directing it. Demand that you be interested in class. Demand that the excuse, you have to learn this for the test, is not good enough for you. Education is an excellent tool, if used properly, but focus more on learning rather than getting good grades. For those of you that work within the system that I am condemning, I do not mean to insult. I intend to motivate. You have the power to change the incompetencies of the system. I know that you did not become a teacher or an administrator to see your students bored. You cannot accept the authority of the governing bodies that tell you what to teach, how to teach, and that you will be punished if you do not comply. Our potential is at stake. For those of you that are now leaving this establishment, I say, do not forget what went on in these classrooms. Do not abandon those that come after you. We are the new future, and we are not going to let tradition stand. We will break down the walls of corruption to let a garden of knowledge grow throughout America. Once educated properly, we will be cultivated and wise. We will have the power to do anything, and best of all, we will use that power for only good. We will not accept anything at face value. We will ask questions and we will demand truth. So here I stand. I'm not standing here as valedictorian by myself. I was molded by my environment, by all my peers who are sitting here behind me. I couldn't have accomplished this without all of you. It was all of you who truly made me the person I am today. It was all of you who were my competition, yet my backbone. In that way, we are all valedictorians. I am now supposed to say farewell to this institution, those who maintain it, and those who stand with me and behind me. But I hope this farewell is more of a see you later, when we are all working together to rear a pedagogic movement. But first, let's go get those pieces of paper that tell us that we're smart enough to do so.
All
That's
sick,
speech,
no?
man.
Yo.
Oh, that was cute.
We got a clap. That was great.
You know, I heard her
And this is fairly old. Like, this
call
is at
out
least
a
10 years old.
scholar.
Oh, really? I thought this was like
I thought this was fucking
recent.
recent, man. Come on,
No,
bro.
this is 2010,
Ah.
man. This is from 2010. I went
Dang.
deep in the archives to find this.
How?
So
Yeah,
So
how'd
it's
you
not like
find that?
millennials are stupid, okay? We have the fucking tools. We have the technology
So nothing new under
to
the
boldly
sun.
go where humankind refuses to go all the fucking time when we're offered.
I
So,
heard her call out the name of John Taylor Gatto, and I would be remiss not to let people know, like the people that I normally roll with Richard Grove and Tony and LV and others at Grand Theft World. Richard Grove and Tony did an interview series with John Taylor Gatto himself just before his death. That's like a 4-part series. It took me 3 or 4 days to watch the entire thing, where he went into very intricate detail and about the pedagogy and molding of the indoctrination by the American public school system. And she actually mentioned that in her valedictorian speech. I just wanted to point that out. Very familiar with that guy, am I? Very familiar.
That's
Ja-
awesome.
Jack, how'd you find
related
that?
To Richard Grove. So related to Richard Grove, I found it through Mark Passio. He on an episode long ago he covered this in full because he wanted to point out the fact that this is and this is back 2010 when he did this. That he wanted to point out the fact that like it's taking our children to show us the truth. Like why are we fucking waking up to this? This is insane.
Well,
We're not.
and
waking
since
up
this
to
is
it.
even
He says a lot of the stuff that he says
By the way.
with Mark Passio, like on consciousness, on how we need to raise awareness and things like that.
The interview series that I watched of John Taylor Gatto that was conducted by Richard Grove and others was in 2006 in Connecticut, and just in terms of time scale.
Yeah,
that's awesome, Yona. I did not know that there was anything like that even recorded, so I'm going to check that out.
It's an absolute treasure trove.
So.
If you'll go to grandtheftworld.com, there's a library of Freedom Library of Knowledge and Truth. Or
Is he still doing Tragedy and Hope?
Yeah. And that's the whole autonomy community. Like what she was saying sounded a whole lot like autonomy, and I would be shocked if she hasn't been in the autonomy community there from the way she was speaking.
Yeah,
actually,
so,
she's got a webpage. I can post it for you guys, but she joined a group. It's pretty interesting. It's an anarchistic, localistic, group that is all about radical decentralization down to the community level. Kind of what we were talking about earlier.
Literally what we're speaking about right now, Jack. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'll see if I can find
it. And what I really have to hammer home is that this is someone speaking from conscience. They are conscious and of their conscience. Right? Like she didn't need fucking independent media fucking shoving shit down their throat 9,000 hours a fucking week. Like she fucking followed all the rules and she came to the conclusion all by herself. Right?
What a great speech. Kudos.
And you see where her progression went is that she went into a localistic and kind of in a radically decentralized kind of mindset of how to fucking live in a free fashion. Right? And
at least this kind of thinking is sprinkled around the population like 10 years ago. And it's grown since then, I'm pretty sure. I mean, we're talking about this now. 10 years ago, I didn't know about any of the, like, how we're going to solve these problems. Like, I didn't know any of that.
Well, good
It's okay,
Lord.
Franco. I didn't know either, Franco.
Look what happened in the last 10 years in terms of homeschooling, Franco. I mean, 10 years ago, it was just a fraction fringe type thing for people to homeschool. That's no longer the case. And, granted, for a multitude of reasons, but right now, there's never been more people homeschooling. There's never been more people getting educated outside of the public school and private school parameters, which is great.
Also, I mean, I like what we're talking about here. We're talking about homeschooling, how like what an education system should look like, localization, food farms. We were talking about Mark
We could do it right
Passio.
now, Franco.
Huh?
Well, hey, Franco, we could do it right now. Like, you could literally, your education system, you could look at what the Panthers did with freedom schools, right? Where they had and had people from different specialties come in and talk to the students and let the students ask and drive the questions. As long as they're, like Reverend Annie says, as long as there was respect. They would bring in lawyers, they would bring in all like different people from different walks of life of different trades and actually like let students ask them. I think that's a great way to learn.
Well, and then, I feel like a lot of people have the idea of like homeschooling being some like a very individualistic picture of like some parents like sitting down with their single child and then educating them day by day. Like, no, it can very much be something done at a communal level, like with something like the freedom schools.
Because it takes one to raise one.
Yeah, or you can do like an educational cadre type deal, which is something that like Jonathan Jackson and Panthers out in LA did as well. And there's various other examples of those types of things happening where you have people, like teaching in a sort of community level. And I mean, that's where you can also incorporate like storytelling into it as well. Like telling like historical stories, like, listen, I'm not going to bring up Drag Queen Story Hour. It's not that, okay? I promise it's not that, so fucking culture warriors can chill. But, like, when you're at your public libraries, that's when you can incorporate, like, traditional storytelling to teach kids about history while also, like, teaching them how to read, reading them stories, getting them excited, as another replacement for daycare or whatever. Like, how storytelling in public libraries, worked at one point. You can incorporate like various different things that already and have already existed into like these ideas of raising community consciousness and educating kids in a way 100%. That's, very separate from the empire, and in fact teaches them the truth that the empire wants to keep hidden. Because I mean, and the reason why I bring up storytelling too is because that's one of the greatest ways through which a lot of stories passed down. That's how about a lot of national heroes that weren't necessary, that the empire did not want you to know about. That's how most Jamaicans know about fucking Queen Nanny of the Maroons. I mean, Granny Nanny is a figure in Jamaica who is a national hero, and she only appears in written historical records twice, 2 or 3 times max. But she's a national hero purely because stories of her passed down through oral tradition. So I think if that's definitely something, you could definitely harness the power of oral storytelling to really educate people and foster that sense of community.
Hell yeah. That's how people learn lessons, right? It's through these stories, and that's most likely why we have the Bible and all these other ancient scriptures, because that's how people during those times learn best, and during these times they can learn this too.
Because when it comes to Cherokee culture, Cherokee storytelling is really our oldest and longest theatrical tradition. And when it comes to schooling in particular, it wasn't until the Eastern Cherokee, with the opening of the Gadua Academy just some 14 years ago now, at last we're able to operate our own school where all courses are taught in Jalagagawanihisti. Now, of course, don't worry. There's an English class every day. It's not like you're not learning English, and it's not like you don't still live on a reservation in the middle of North Carolina. But at long last, teaching in Cherokee and doing all the stories and lessons in Cherokee and all subjects in Cherokee is essential to our language revitalization and the revitalization of all of our arts and sciences in Cherokee language itself, because there's so much more intrinsic and harmonious thought in Cherokee philosophy, I find, than this individualistic take. Well, even some of the Aristotelian logic is rather individualistic, where it talks about the ego, whereas our focus and everything is on such a generational time scale. I think of like the Mayan clock and the Mayan calendar, where they have a unit of measure called the Bach tune, which is like thousands of years for that to go all the way around back to zero. You know what I mean, Franco?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, like I mean, we've been indoctrinated for such a fucking like. We've been indoctrinated from birth, man. Like, and culture is indoctrination in some fashions, right? And like, that's like part of the empire fucking breaking you down in the process of individuation into their little collective groups, right? Like, we are not, we don't, our identity does not belong to those fucking people. Like, nobody's identity belongs to fucking those people, but they keep fucking trying to make you think so. It's like, that's like number one here is heal worldview, right?
Yeah. I have this up here because people are going to be like, okay, so can you lay out exactly what the solutions are? So, in addition to what we were talking about this whole time, right? Building food farms in your community, having community homeschooling programs, informing your neighbors. We have this right up here. This is from Mark Passio, right? He talks about a lot of the same stuff we're talking about here.
He developed an entire series of podcasts over this. I highly recommend everyone go to his website, What on Earth is Happening. Go to the podcast section and look for, he does an entire show on solutions, like an entire series. And this is from that series.
And Derek Rose also had, like, he talks about solutions. I recommend his Pyramid of Power that exposes, like, each sector of all these major industries, right? He talks about Hollywood. He talks about the education system. All these different, like, banking system, and then he proposes solutions at the end. Who was it that proposed really interesting solutions that's similar to Freedom Cells but adds on to that? Cynthia McKinney.
Cynthia McKinney.
She also proposes great solutions.
Just want to say OCO to Marxist Saul down there in the chat, writing in the Jalaki Gawani Histi. Jalaki Histi.
So you guys want to look at each of these? You said we have here heal worldview.
Yeah, so healing the worldview is this deals with worldview poisoning, which happens when someone consumes mainstream media and is under the assumption that all there is death and murder in the world. So healing the worldview is basically tuning out the toxic sources of information that are impacting your worldview and poisoning you, right? And so that one is just off the bat that I noticed, like, I've gone through basically all of these and to an extent, but so that one is key, as well as, so when he talks about changing the quality of attention, he's talking about the generative principle, right? What you care about, what you put your care in is what, what's going to manifest, right? So basically what you pay your attention to is what you will manifest. So if that's the case, change the quality of what you're paying attention to. Great example is like we just mentioned with Food Force. We all just now paid our attention to that, which is already a step forward on this, right?
Yeah.
So another thing is developing true present moment awareness, which there's some work on that. I would recommend going to his podcast to learn more about that. That's basically just being aware and being thankful for the present, right? Being present-minded focused, really taking into consideration and being thankful. And then just real quick, changing diet is a massive one I would highly recommend. And again, that deals with Food Force as well, because we can even change what we're getting our diet from. And then also what we were talking about was detaching from the monetary system. But these are all, Passio has a great saying, and I agree with this completely. And he says, you can't just make someone aware of a problem like willy-nilly. Or he didn't say willy-nilly, but you can't just make someone aware of a problem and that's it. He said, if you're going to make someone aware of a problem, you need to have a solution. So I love the fact that he dedicates like an entire series of his show to this. But yeah, if there's any questions on those, let me know. And then if we want to, move on to the other ones.
Yeah. And with changing the diet too, that not only makes us less dependent on the food and agriculture industry, but that also makes us less dependent on big pharma, because if we continue to have this diet that they're forcing us to have, because they put all these ingredients in food that's affordable to people, we're less likely to develop autoimmune diseases like lupus, Hashimoto's disease, developing cancers, and then we become dependent on big pharma. So changing your diet would be key to that, and having these food forests really would improve your health, improve your mental health, and make your mind clearer, and you're less dependent on this.
Well, since your body's a machine, and if you're feeding it shit, you're getting shit.
Well, I mean, especially because there's a lot of spices, especially, you know, the magic isn't just in good produce or good meat. It's also definitely in good spices as well, because a lot of, you know, the fucking turmeric, allspice, ginger, oh my god,
it's
like
so important.
Like mint, thyme,
even like white pepper.
Oh yeah, all that good stuff. Allspice again, because I'm Jamaican, so I'm gonna bring that up. But yeah, I mean, I could keep going on about spices, because many of them are like, they just have so many benefits. Like, they're natural anti-inflammatory agents. They naturally give you energy. They naturally they naturally help, like Jack was saying, or was it Shadow or Jack? One of them was saying helping to clear your mind, helping to give you that extra sense of clarity, and simple stuff like that really helps not only improve your physical state, but also improve your mental state. So, I mean,
it's
also
real multi.
Sorry, you were gonna say one more thing, Glory?
No, that I finished my point.
I was gonna say, like, we talked about this with Yona when we discussed Thanksgiving. A lot of the harmful foods, not only is it like GMO and things like that, but we were talking about cheese and gluten, which comes from wheat, which is difficult for some people to digest, especially now, and then it's linked to some of these autoimmune diseases. Isn't it funny that this came from like Western Europe? Like, it came from like England and Spain, and in those countries also they don't use many spices, right? Am I wrong there?
Well, that's one thing trust me. Listen, okay, like, y'all motherfuckers out here in Northwestern Europe, like, like there's a line from that song "Terrorist" by Low Key, where what did he say? He says it seems like the something and the Pakis are worrying your dad, but your dad's favorite food is curry and kebab. Like motherfucker, y'all better. I say a prayer for the diaspora that are here, that are making sure that I am spiced up while I am in Northern Europe. Like, you know, jokes aside though, like, that's an idea that I really like about the food forest as well, and localization of a lot of your food chains is your communities are consuming stuff that's local to your environment, and thus that's best for your people. I mean, it's like there are a lot of people around the world that have always been lactose intolerant. Like, not everybody has the same tolerance for cow's milk that Vikings do. Not everybody has the tolerance for serrano chili peppers that whatever shadow band refugee ambiguous self is, and people in Latin America do. Like, not everybody has the same tolerance for certain food ingredients, you know, like I mentioned, like spicy peppers, or like milk. So, or like wheat. So, you know, like it's funny because when that Russian grain deal happened, you know, the ultimate white knighting of Vladimir Putin to ship a bunch of grain to Africa, I had to laugh. I had to laugh because African countries, they don't need your grain.
They don't need your shit.
Yeah, especially when you consider a lot of the countries around the global south, you know, I don't know how to say this because there's so much more to consumption than just grain. There's also like rice is a
Yeah.
huge fucking thing in the Caribbean, bro. That is
Oh
why
yeah.
there's like 57,000 different variations of rice and beans depending on where you go in the Caribbean. Like,
And in
rice
North
is huge,
America,
and
in South
not just
America.
generic grain either. Like historic types of grain and historic types of rice that isn't just your generic white bread or your generic like white rice. Um, and I can keep giving more examples too of
I,
different types of flours, etc. Like corn is also huge, but I mean, like that's something that also ties into this whole thing and
Yeah.
the whole and localization of your food supply is you're able to consume what's best for your community.
Do you guys know more about history than me? Do you guys think that in with the feudal system that ancient England, France, ancient Spain had, they forced their people to be so dependent on bread and dairy? What are your guys' thoughts on that? Is that do you think that they had a
Um,
healthier
I
food?
definitely I
Yeah,
definitely think there's an aspect of attacking food sovereignty and enforcing dependence as a means to further subjugate your populace. I definitely think that's an aspect of it, but also, like I was bringing up, a lot of, a lot of like Viking groups in particular,
yeah,
the Saxon, and I'm not just naming Viking groups here, but like a lot of northwest, like proper indigenous northwestern European cultures, like the Frisians, the Saxons, the I could keep going on and on there, but they actually do have a good tolerance for something like milk.
gotcha.
That's
yeah, I just wanted to take a moment. Sorry for butting in. I wanted to wait a second here and respond to Marx's Saw in the chat there. I don't
Oh,
know if you can
absolutely.
notice over my shoulder on the wall here, but this is also my part-time classroom for all of my little Cherokee Indians. Let me just pull it up closer to the camera here. Um, this is what we call the Didelo Guastodi, which is our Cherokee syllabary.
Oh,
And so,
hell yeah.
each one of these is like, because it writes in columns, it almost looks like somebody asked me on one of my streams if it was Japanese, because katakana and hiragana are kind of the same. And we have the 85 standard characters. And this is the print that was developed with Chief Sequoia and Samuel Worcester before the great removal, what we call the Trail of Tears. But these are actually in columns, like with vowel sounds. So, you have like the ka ga ha, and then a k ge hey, e ki gi e, o ko go ho, oo ku goo hoo, ka ga ha. Different sounds with each consonant, because each symbol is a whole thing. That's enough with the Cherokee lesson. But anyways, that's what's behind my shoulder. Sorry about that.
Well,
It
actually,
looks
that goes into the
closer to like
non-supported
the
dominators.
Telugu or the
That is
Tamil
so beautiful.
languages from South India than Japanese.
Mm.
But then again, I don't know Cherokee or Tamil or Telugu or any of the or Kanji or any of the other Japanese dialects. So I'll just shut
Yeah.
up.
Like, and the more that one language is spread around, like on a very deep spiritual level, that steals people's souls. Like, because English is the language of business, most definitely the language of fucking business. There's words in fucking English and Black Law's English law dictionary that don't exist in other languages because they're fucking evil, like concept. It's evil. And so when people's fucking languages are taken from them, it's taking all fucking resistance out of them because they believe that they exist within this system that was fucking taught to them. That was
Yeah, like
indoctrinated.
forcing
That's the nature
Spanish
of
in Latin
domination.
America and French in some African countries, or Italian in some African countries, and English.
Yes.
You take away
Crazy.
someone's birthright, which is their ability to converse with others in a manner that is respecting of not just their ancestors, but of who they are. It's like a fundamental way that these freaking dominators will seek to destroy any relics of anything profoundly in tune with nature. And that includes language.
Yeah.
When we speak words into existence.
Well,
So-
and people ask me about what is so different about this linguistic thing. And for anyone that's ever studied another language, I can tell you that in particular, when it comes to Cherokee, think about when you conjugate a verb, right? And conjugating verbs, like for example, in Latin languages, whether it's Spanish or French or Italian or Portuguese, is kind of standard. You can make out the single, first person versus second person, third person, singular versus plural, like us, as in nosotros, luchamos, right? We struggle together versus or something in the first person, how to conjugate a verb. I don't want to get lost on this, but in Cherokee, there are so many different types of verb tenses and persons. Like, for example, when you go to conjugating a verb, there's like we as in you and I and them, or we as in just as you and me, or we or they as in you and them, but not me. I mean, and all of these specific little part, and all it takes is changing of a suffix. And so what happens is, whenever I go to translate a thought from Cherokee back to Galicia, back to Yoneg, English language, then all of a sudden, what was just one or two sentences in Cherokee, now in order to give the full context, is an entire whole ass paragraph. You see. And so, because English relies so much on these very vague pronouns, it's very pronoun heavy. Whereas, take for example, Espanol, Spanish, for example, when they go to conjugate verbs, Spanish doesn't need the nosotros or the yo. If you want to say I eat, right? I eat tacos, right? Yo como tacos. You don't need the yo. You say como tacos. But if it's French, you would say je mange des tacos, right? You always have the pronoun in front, right? But as Franco can attest, you don't need. They just do away with pronouns in Spanish. Don't even need them. And so it makes it a challenge.
I think we're gonna close off here. I think we had a great conversation. We should have another one.
That was fucking
we
fun,
need
man.
these solutions panels. There's people that tell us that we don't have solutions. I think we're the ones that do. At least ones that are really well thought out, and not ones that are just like repeating things that will lead us to the problems that we currently have, right? Still voting in this system that we have, when
Believing it makes a fucking difference, man.
Right.
Yeah, man, just buy gold and vote Republican, man.
Yeah, or that, or cryptocurrency, as if
Well,
like
I didn't mean to get
That's
you wrong,
fucking
Franco,
religion,
but,
man.
the point that I was speaking to, Franco, is this, and I think you can understand this point, Franco, that whenever you approach English language and you're not just relegated to only the English language, when you're able to speak in another language and then go to the English language, I feel like you have a more critical take, not just on the grammar, but on the actual thought and the way that thought is being worded, particularly if you run it through your mind in a different language. It just gives you a different perspective of analysis, right?
I get that. Like when I think in my head in Spanish, I have a different perspective than when I think in my head in English. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's,
For me, it's the same thing. If I think about it, Cherokee or English or Yone. Yeah.
The closest I can get is thinking in like the really shitty like Miami Spanglish, where it's like,
yeah.
like I mirror coño como.
Yeah, fucking Spanish.
You guys
New
want to
Mexico
give
is
any?
wild. There's like 17,000 dialects all at once. There's the people from the old country, like from all different parts, and then they're living in all different parts of the war zone and fucking the South Valley, dude, and all the fucking natives here that have been here for a few hundred years, like, and like there's so many different types of Spanish here. It's fucking incredible. But
You guys want to give any closing remarks? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Saying
no, you're good. Anybody else first?
This Saturday, December 10th is International Human Rights Day. There's going to be a bunch of protests happening for Julian Assange. I know one is happening in DC. There's stuff happening in Tulsa. There's an action happening in Denver. I think there's stuff happening in either New York or Boston. I can't remember which. And then, of course, there'll be stuff happening in London, 12 to 2 p.m. outside Belmarsh, then 2 to 4 p.m. doing lanterns outside Belmarsh, then 4 to 6 p.m. doing Piccadilly Circus. And then at night, we watch England lose to France while we wave the Palestinian flags as Morocco beats Portugal. I really hope my statement doesn't age poorly on that, but yeah.
Hey,
yeah, that's my
crazy
final
things
thought.
happen in the World Cup sometimes. Remember,
Yeah.
no one thought South Korea was going to make it to the semifinals in 2002, and they did.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm Glory. You can find me on the ground and around.
Great.
I'd say Food Forest, I think, are one of the main ones that has really just caught my eye, and the fact that these have been done, and the fact that anyone can do these. Like I said, a guerrilla food forest is you just buying a $1 bag of seeds and just throwing it, just knowing that it's at least within that region. So the temperate zone, look at the mapping system. But again, that's the thing, is like the more local we eat our food, the better our health is. That's just, it makes sense
100%.
when you think about it. And it's the principle of assimilation. What we eat, we become. Like, very literally, it becomes a part of us. So if we're eating food that was grown with love and abundance and is outside, like right near us, think about the effect and profound impacts on health and society that has, not to mention rapid decentralization. So again, anyone looking for resources on that, you can just Google food, or, DuckDuckGo Food Force. Also, if you want to check out a site that I use, I haven't vetted all their content, but it seems pretty good. It's foodforestabundance.com.
Awesome.
Fucking great, man. Yona, you want to go first or no?
Sure, you can follow me and find me at Yona Aniwodi, YONAANIWODI. And that's my handle on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and BitChute and Odyssey and so on and so forth, as well as Cash App, because I don't really mess with PayPal anymore. But beyond that, I got nothing but love for you. And as we say, Wage of Goldie, Shataka Safety. Many blessings.
We got to talk about Cherokee spirituality soon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to get more into Katua and Crossland Smith and Adag St. You know, the real depths of love, eternal love. That's what it's all about.
I'm Satan Claus today.
Show us the hat.
Oh, you want to see the hat?
Where'd you get that? And why is it camouflage?
You'd have to ask my beautiful partner in this fucking current incarnation.
So are you gonna have a
festival? Gigi Allen. That's for Gigi Allen. He used to like piss and shit in his hands, throw it in the crowd, like hardcore punker. Yeah, that's Gigi. But I'm sorry, you want to say that one more time?
I said, are you going to have a Festivus pole with your Satan Claus hat there?
I was thinking about it. Yes.
Festivus pole. If you've never watched Seinfeld, you won't know what the Festivus pole is, but it's an alternate to Christmas celebration.
An anecdote on Seinfeld real quick is, I don't know if you guys knew this, but the people behind it were actually, they devoted a lot of their life to studying the Tree of Life. And Seinfeld itself is, it's actually showing what happens when care is removed from society. Because if you look at all the characters, they don't care. And so like the last episode where they get locked up shows what happens as a consequence of a society that has no care.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that
look
either,
at that
man.
whole show differently.
Right? I know, dude. It blew my mind when I found that out.
Been a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting me, Franco.
Absolutely,
absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. I what I really want to lead people with is because we touched a lot on food here, and we kind of scraped the surface of spirituality and like reimagining in your mind, like your mental state, of like what the world can become rather than the way it is now. Like,
imagine.
So the feed. So all these YouTubes and Googles and Twitters and all the fucking things, the feed. Think about what that word means to you, because we talked about language too.
Consumption
the
of media.
Word. What are they feeding you? What are you feeding yourself?
And is it poisoning
Maybe
your
it's time to log the fuck off. I like nothing could have been better for my fucking spiritual and mental and physical state than to fucking nuke all the goddamn subscriptions, dude. And just like, yeah, that's fucking dumb.
When I got rid of
listen to this shit.
When I got rid of the demonic entity known as Twitter, my life became like so much better.
Oh god.
There it is.
I ain't trying to bash nobody with the Twitter, but like that shit is fucking cancer, bro. Bad for you.
It's
bad for you.
Spiritual lack in me that like it made me neurotic on the fact that I was not having a conscience about any kind of like anything I was doing, man. Like it is soul sucking. And again, some people can handle that. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could handle it, fine,
and that goes to
like,
admitting one's faults, man. You got to know your limits, man.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, like the number of channels I listen to now, like for politics, like political commentary is 0. I don't listen to any right now. In this show I do as a hobby. And I think that when you detach yourself, that's when you can probably be the most honest with yourself and on these channels. And what
independence, motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly.
And interdependence. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not treating it like a career.
Sending out some positive blessings to all my homies. Many blessings.
There we go.
Mucho bendiciones a todos mi compañero y compañera. Viva la lucha.
Yeah.
I've been blessing this whole ass fucking stream, yo.
Yeah. So take that, haters. I don't know what you're gonna clip out or talk about. I don't think that there's anything negative to say about what we talked about here. But yeah.
And shout out to Indian country for showing up in the chat for me tonight. Much love to all
Indian country,
all across the Americas, plural, from Tierra del Fuego all the way to Alaska and back in. That's right, amigos.
Awesome. But there you have it, folks. As always, stay informed. Take care.
Love y'all.
Later.